there multiple times, looked at schools and colleges, or schools for my children and housing and other things like that. And one day I was in Bombay and Jan called up and said that, Ashok, you come tomorrow to Hyderabad. He was in Hyderabad. The next morning I was in plane and I came to Hyderabad. I met him here in one of the hotels. He took me to his room and he showed a PowerPoint presentations of certain things and his vision of what he wanted to do. And he said that, why are you going to Singapore? You come to Holland. Go to Holland, talk to Marcel, talk to Lawrence, couple other people. And 2 weeks later, I was in Holland. Of course, he had already told them that I'm going to come and then kind of figure things out. And but the point was that that evening after I listened to him, and it was very similar to the talk he gave right now in the sense of the vision, the future, and what it was in it, and what one could accomplish as an individual and as a company. So I called up my wife that evening and said that, we are already looking at Singapore, and we had almost frozen everything in Singapore in terms of where and what and everything. So she told me once, and I was trying to analyze, should we not do the pros and cons, and what it means or what it doesn't mean. She said one thing: he's your mentor. He says go to Holland, you go. So I think that lesson I have learned, I have embodied it later on in my life, in my current situation. What I do is that if you have a mentor, you just follow. And I think that's one of the lessons I learned with Jan, and I think what I lead to my success being part of that. So thank you very much. If there's somebody else.
Thank you. Good evening to everybody. When I joined Baan, I had already passed about 25 years. And I was very well established as an operations management professor in ET. But Baan turned out to be a turning point of my career. That is what I want to say. This 4 years has given me a lot, which changed my life post-Baan. So a few things which I learned. One of the things which I learned was boundary spanner. I was a business guy, know nothing about technology. In fact, before joining, I met Ramnathan. I was not very sure whether I am the right person to join Baan Institute. But if you don't worry, you will pick up. So what I learned was that technology, and it's a boundary spanning, is basically the people must both business and technology, then only they can give a good solution, otherwise they cannot give a good solution. That happens to be my future. How it changed things in future, I'll just tell about that. Second thing I learned very different in Baan, which was much ahead of its time. You also mentioned about DEM, Dynamic Enterprise Modeling. Now, Dynamic Enterprise Modeling, this was one of the subjects I was teaching. Fortunately, I could relate to my business thing more. That is everything, business is a process. So everything has to be driven like a business process. That was the main thing. Then later on came to my a big support when I started Enterprise Solution Academy for Infosys from scratch to and matured it. What we did was that everybody was training, including Sapient and Oracle University, the modules of ERP. But what we developed deriving from them, that everything you need in the business is a business process. So we created lots of courses which is business process driven. So order to cash, for example, which we have partly from CRM, partly from sales and distribution, partly from inventory, partly from various things. Integrate them together and bring them together. So we developed so many courses which even Sapient didn't have and Oracle University didn't have. That made what I can say proudly to the contribution, I can say your contribution to the growth of Infosys Enterprise Solution Group to $1 billion from about $300 million. This was one of the major things which contributed to the growth of it. And when I retired in 2009 from Enterprise Solution Academy, I thanked you for creating what we did. Gartner acknowledged this, and the Gartner chart changed the position of Enterprise Solution of Infosys because we came out with something which is very, very different than what others were doing. So that was really DEM inspired. So I always remember you for that. Then the third thing which I learned initially I was very uncomfortable with that, was SS approach new startup company. And we mentioned about WebEx and all. I was not very comfortable because that was not my area at that time, but I learned a lot and used that in future so much so that I myself after became an entrepreneur when I was 63. So I have my startup company, and we are making some lean digital products, apps using this. And of course, now I'm not driving. My partner is driving, who is much younger to me. I've gone back to professor, but again taken this startup. So when I'm talking about technology and boundary spanners, I teach in business schools nowadays. I teach in IIM Indore, I'm teaching in IIM Kashipur, I'm teaching in SP Jain in Dubai and Singapore. These new entrepreneurs, these new executives and PGP students who understand business very well, but not so exposed to digital and what we call as a digital disruption. So we're bringing them together to make them into boundary spanner, and many of them I am guiding them as a startup companies. So what I learned in Baan in 2002 is now coming handy to help others. So primarily it's become my focus is more of a professor helping others, but Baan has contributed a lot. So that I really remember, every time I remember, I don't contact you, I do not mention you, but in my heart I always remember because these things are with me and contributing to society and the education. And lastly, what I learned from you is what Ramnathan also mentioned about work-life balance. I mean, very few people, everybody is talking about it, nobody is doing it. So I remember when you met me and when I was meeting the academy for this, at that time, outside internet facilities were not very easily available and bandwidth was a very big problem. And most of the people were bachelors, so they used to come on Saturday to the academy and work and do the browsing, network browsing. So I used to go on Saturday to make sure that nobody is there and ask them to go and meet your physical friends, spend time with the family. Don't go for the movie, go outing, whatever you do, but spend time for religion maybe, but don't sit here. So that I used to do. I have not seen anywhere else. People are so particular about, balance between work and life. And of course, being a multinational, my first exposure to multicultural working, and I got a chance to create 5 workshops between Netherlands and India. How do we come together to work more closely? So these are the things which is still driving me. So in a nutshell, in summary, the 4 things which is still driving me today, which I derive from Baan. That's why I say it was a turning point for me. One was boundary spanner. I had a big fight in Infosys to introduce 15 days course only on business process for the technical people. And finally they agreed, So this is in my blood now. Dynamic enterprise modeling, the process driven, everything is a process driven. Third thing is startup, because that is what is coming today. No more regular employment in the corporates, and people have to be startup and give employment to others. Small can challenge the big. This is what the new thing is. And finally, the work-life balance and multinationals. This is driving me today, and I'm really thankful. And every time, in my heart, bow to you that you made me change my life after long. So thank you so much.
But he's forgetting, he's not explaining one thing, but we enjoy very much his singing. That was, if we had a nice dinner together, then always we asked him to do a nice song. Thank you.
In 3 shifts, we remember those tough days, working throughout the night in different shifts and all. So those days, Baan and Microsoft, only these are the 2 words people know. When people ask what is Baan, what does Baan does, what is the product and all, nobody knows actually. It's an ERP, that's the only word people know. ERP, then ERP means SAP, that's it. So it's all synonyms actually, SAP and ERP. But that is when Baan came to Hyderabad, and even computer illiterates also, for example, our fathers and mothers, they all know Baan. So those are the days we joined Baan, and we were hesitant. Being a professionally qualified accountant, I was hesitant to join and apply for the job, knowing that my qualification and my experience suits. But still I was hesitant because it's a multinational company. Nevertheless, I joined Baan, and for 10 years I worked for Baan, and I went through the journey of Baan, Invensys, SSA Global, and then eventually like Infor. So I'm thankful to Kiran that after 10 years spending in Infor, and I joined Oracle for 3.5 or 4 years for a short while. Somehow I was not comfortable working for Oracle. I'm sorry if any of the Oracle professionals are over here. Because of the architecture, right from Triton, Baan 4, Baan 5, ERP, LN, all these things sunk into my mind. So, it has become DNA of my, blood, I can say. Seriously. Then I felt uncomfortable, and eventually Kiran's company, Comac IT, has a services company called Koso Solutions, and my brother Rani Srinivas is also here. He pulled me, he was working for Kiran's company Koso. He pulled me back to Koso, and since then I'm still working for Koso, implementing more than 10-15 implementations I did. So eventually I'm fortunate to meet Mr. Baan along with Kiran and Atuluri Srinivas, my Vice President. We three met in Avasa about 1.5 years ago when you were promoting rootstock applications. I hope you remember. And I can proudly say that today we are the South Asian partners for rootstock Koso Solutions, and we have recently completed one implementation in Thailand. So that's how it is. So my association with Baan is memorable. I'm still with Baan and his mentor company, Rootstock. So thank you very much.
Thank you. For marketing Kosar, you have to pay the dinner bill today.
So good evening, friends. I'm also delighted to be here, and for a number of reasons, of course. So today I have seen, the first, second, third, fourth generation of Baan leaders in this room. Not only just Baan, but Baan, Vandenberg, Cordis, and of course the story goes on. I think one of the quote I remember, and this gentleman just reminded me, when we used to talk about SAP, Mr. Baan used to say, yes, of course SAP is bigger, but we are better. So I think that was, one of the key things I remember. And, I also had a terrific journey with Baan and Vandenberg. So I was fortunate that I started with a company as an AAC, or what you call as a junior engineer or support engineering consulting. So delighted to work with Ashok and, as my first boss. But I finally ended up reporting to Mr. Jan Baan. So it was an amazing journey from where the company you start your career, you get an opportunity to work with the founder. But, before I share any of my experiences, and of course I want to tell you a small story, and I will not ask for permission because that's what you told us always. But it's a bit of personal, interaction with Mr. Baan. But before I go there, actually, I would like to, take a moment to recognize someone, who guided the destiny of Baan and Vandenberg in India, Mr. Subramaniam Ramanathan. So I think he deserves a big round of applause. And I think what he did, of course, working with Mr. Baan and Ashok and the rest of the team, I would say he had, strong influence on many of us. And I think many of us, worked with him, followed him, not just because of his competence, but also because of his character. So I think I personally feel, privileged that, I got this opportunity, to work with Ramanathan. Since it's a very open discussion, I think, we have a lot of praises for Mr. Baan, but there was one thing we were very upset about, and when the Baan company was sold, and I would like to recognize that moment. So he came to India after Baan company was sold, and he was as energetic as you see him today and, 20 years ago. and he was, fully energized, talking to everyone, welcoming, and, there was absolutely no sign of any kind of discomfort on his face. And actually that made me feel very uncomfortable. And I said, how come, he can sell a company which we were associated with for so long, and he is still energizing, he's, fully charged, and there is, and we were feeling bad, I said, oh, our company was sold and this, and so I got an opportunity to talk to him, and so I told Mr. Baan, I know you're a businessman, you are an entrepreneur, it was your company, it was your vision, it was your money, it was your passion, of course you sold it. But for some of us, I think we were associated with it in some of the early stages. It was a very emotional attachment, it was very unpleasant for us. And he was serious then. Then I could see pain on his face, and he told me something which I am sharing with you today. I don't recall sharing this with anyone, but he said, Zakir, for me, the entire harvest of my life is gone with the wind. So I think these were his words. And that day I could realize, the poem he used to talk about and what you see earlier, he could deal with triumph and disaster, and he could keep these two imposters exactly the same. And I think that is the reason, they say whatever is in the earth is for you, and for us, you are the man, Mr. Baan. So, we really thank you for your vision, for your leadership, for your creativity, and, inspiring all of us to be part of this journey, and wish you all the very best, for your next endeavors. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I forgot one thing to explain, and it was good you remember this one, and it's Mr. Ramanathan, is what we did with the high-tech city, and in high-tech city with our Vanenburg, with our property. My money went up, money went down. And then we had to sell, we did it in a very professional way with Ramanathan, with Kirti and the team, and also what we did is building the real estate, selling it, and then we had a debut with the government for how many years? 12 years, for 12 years. And the government had the idea that, and they took taxes from us, and we disagree with it. And then we saw a little in India the red tape. And he helped me. First of all, we sustained it, but he helped me tremendous therein. On the end, we are winning. The money came back to us due to him and what he did. But one important element, he helped me also in integrity. Maybe we could have had some money quite on the table. He always advised me, Mr. Baan, we should not do this. We should stay to the rules, we should stay to the law. And I'm very pleased and thank you very much for what you did there. You did. And of course, I put you all, but a lot in him. He owns me a lot in everything he did, and I'm very happy that even still today we are united there together. Thank you very much for this.
Anyone else wanting to speak? 1 minute. I'll take 2 minutes.
Good evening, everyone. And I thank the organizers for organizing this function. I think I'm one of the youngest who joined in this group, maybe. I joined Mr. Jan Baan's company, erstwhile Vanenburg Business IT Solutions in 2001, just after my college. And thanks to my offer